Next tip is to eat the highest quality meat that you can afford. If you can afford grass-fed, grass-finished, panda-massaged meat from the Himalayan mountains that are raised by monks, that's great. Buy that. That's good. That's going to be a little bit better than cheaper quality meat. But if all you can afford is hot dogs and bologna and potted meat and Spam, you can still do a great carnivore diet on that as well. Always buy the best quality that you can currently afford and always be looking for higher quality. But there's no reason, if your funds are limited, that you cannot also benefit yourself from a very healthy carnivore diet. The next tip is don't forget about eggs. Don't forget about liver. Don't forget about seafood. Don't forget about shellfish. These are all carnivore. If any food comes from an animal, that's carnivore, okay? And some people add insects. They eat crickets in their carnivore diet, and I think that's perfectly ancestrally appropriate. I personally don't do that, at least yet I don't. But do not forget these great sources of fat and protein. Eggs and liver. Liver is a superfood multivitamin. If you can find some kind of liver that you love and you eat that 2 or 3 times a week, that's going to be an excellent source of vitamins and minerals that otherwise you may just not have access to. Many people worry about vitamin C deficiency, scurvy, and other vitamin deficiencies on a carnivore diet. But I know people who have been doing a carnivore diet for over a decade, and they've not eaten a shred of plant food in that time, and they don't take supplements, and they have not developed scurvy or any other vitamin deficiency. There are several theories as to why this doesn't happen in carnivores, how they're able to be so healthy when they're not eating oranges or kiwi fruit for vitamin C. We don't know exactly why that is yet, but we just know it is so, because there are thousands upon thousands of people who haven't eaten any plants, any source of that kind of vitamin C in over a decade, and they're doing fine. There is some vitamin C in liver and other vitamins that are present in fresh meat, but not quite in as high a quantity as it is in liver. That's why I really want you to find cod liver or chicken liver or beef liver, some kind of liver that you enjoy, and make that part of your carnivore diet from day one. I think that's very, very important. The next tip is what to drink. I want you to drink water as much as you possibly can. I don't mean force water when you're not thirsty. I mean try to make that the majority of what you drink. It can be still water or it can be sparkling water. I think that's fine. Many carnivores drink black coffee or unsweetened tea as part of their carnivore diet, and they do great. I don't think those things are off limits, although some carnivores might tell you otherwise. The next tip has been very important for me, and I hear from the carnivore community that it's very, very important for them as well, is to try to focus on ruminant animals as the majority of your meat intake. So this would be cows, sheep, goats, venison, any animal that is a ruminant, that has a multiple chamber stomach. Magic happens inside that ruminant animal when they eat plants and turn that into tasty meat. And it seems that many carnivores just do better on a ruminant heavy diet. This is not to say that pork is bad or poultry's bad or seafood's bad, but most carnivores seem to experience their optimal physical shape and form and mental ability when they're focusing on ruminant meat mostly. The next tip is to eat as nose to tail as possible. I think this is very, very important because of the vitamins and minerals I talked about earlier. I think it mirrors the way our ancestors ate animals. They never left the liver behind. They probably never left any organ behind. They ate all that. They cracked open the bones and got the marrow. They used a big rock to crack open the cranium and get the brain. They ate all that because all those are excellent sources of nutrition. And we want to be the best shepherds we can for the animals and for our planet. And eating nose to tail, that puts less waste out there, right? You're using that animal more completely, and I think that's a great way to honor that animal, that no part of it went to waste, and that you also gleaned the very meaningful nutrition in that organ meat as well. The next tip is to don't fret if you slip up. If you have friends come over and they bring a casserole and you're like, and you eat that, don't worry about that one meal. What you don't want that meal to do is to turn into you falling off the wagon for a week or 2 or 3. So if you do slip up at a meal, or you eat something, you're like, oh crap, I thought that was 0 carb and they added some sugar and I didn't know it. That don't beat yourself up about that. Don't have negative thoughts about that. Just immediately refocus and recenter. Why am I doing this carnivore diet? What are my goals? And then get right back on the carnivore wagon, and do not let that dissuade you from doing that. Next tip would be to consider a carnivore diet versus a ketovore diet. So a ketovore diet is when you eat a very, very meat-heavy ketogenic diet, but you still have some plants in there. Not many. Some people do better on a ketovore diet. Some people do better on just a meat-only carnivore diet. Experiment and play around with that. Another experiment that I think you should play with is spices and rubs and condiments, onion, garlic. Some carnivores have to eliminate all that stuff and only use salt or mineral drops for their condiment. Other carnivores seem to do great they can use spices, they can use 0 carb, sugar-free rubs. They can put a little bit of chopped, minced up garlic or onion with their meat, and it doesn't seem to affect them or cause inflammation at all. But you may not be one of those carnivores, so you have to experiment with that yourself. Another thing to experiment with on a carnivore diet is your protein to fat ratio. I personally do better when I get the fat ratio as high as I possibly can. And I'll do this by cooking in animal fat, by adding butter to the meat,